The impossible defense. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Coalition Academy fell silent as Admiral Joel Corvin stepped onto the platform. His scaled skin, once a vibrant azure, had faded to a pale blue-gray with age. The ceremonial armor that adorned his four-armed frame bore the scars of countless battles, each mark telling a story of its own. But it was the clouded left eye, replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed a soft amber, that most captivated the audience of young officer cadets. "I stand before you today not to glorify war," Admiral Corvin began, his voice resonating through the hall with a gravelly timbre, "but to ensure you understand what awaits beyond our borders." The holographic display behind him activated, showing the vast starscape of the Orion Arm. 50 cycles ago, I commanded the 7th Expansion Fleet. We were the pride of the Coalition. 200 warships, each crewed by the finest warriors from 17 different species. Corvin paused, his functioning eye scanning the audience. None of us had heard of humans then. A young Vexian cadet raised a tentacle. "Admiral, our historical texts say humans were a primitive species confined to a single planetary system. How could they have posed any threat to a full expansion fleet?" A bitter clicking sound emanated from Corvin's throat, the equivalent of a harsh laugh. "Your historical texts, cadet, were written by politicians who never faced humans in combat." Corvin tapped a command into his wrist device, and a hologram shifted to show a small, unremarkable blue-green planet. This was Ta City E, a human colony world with fewer than 20,000 settlers. Intelligence classified it as a research outpost with minimal defenses, the perfect target for our first demonstration of Coalition might. The hologram zoomed in to show orbital scans of small settlements and rudimentary infrastructure. We deployed according to standard protocol. I sent 30 warships, more than enough to secure an immediate surrender from such a small colony. Corvin's voice dropped lower. We expected capitulation within hours. We received no response to our communication attempts. The Admiral's cybernetic eye flickered as he recalled the memory. When no surrender came, I ordered a precision orbital strike on their primary defense installation, a small bunker complex near their main settlement. The strikes were textbook perfect. The hologram showed explosions blossoming across the planet's surface, or so we thought. Corvin manipulated the controls again, and the view shifted to show the aftermath. Where the bunker had been, there was only a smoking crater. We detected no survivors, no energy signatures, nothing to indicate resistance. I ordered the ground invasion to commence. Corvin's four hands clenched into fists. We deployed 12,000 ground troops across 3 landing zones. Again, standard procedure for a colony of that size. The hologram switched to ground-level footage from Coalition combat recorders. Armored troops moving cautiously through forested terrain, weapons ready. The first 6 hours proceeded exactly as planned. No resistance. We established our forward operating bases and began advancing toward the main settlement. Corvin paused, his breathing growing more labored. Then, Squad Leader Thrix's unit went silent. The footage showed Coalition soldiers moving through a narrow valley when suddenly the ground beneath them erupted. Not in explosions, but in a series of precisely controlled landslides. They had studied our landing patterns from orbit and predicted our most likely ground routes, Corvin explained. They transformed the natural terrain into weapons. Those weren't military engineers. They were civilian miners who understood the structural weaknesses of the landscape better than our geological survey teams. The cadets watched in horror as the recorded footage showed entire squads being buried alive under tons of rock and soil. We lost 300 soldiers in the first wave of attacks. Not a single shot had been fired by either side. Corvin's voice was grim. But that was just the beginning. The hologram shifted again, now showing nighttime footage. Coalition soldiers had established defensive perimeters around their landing zones, illuminated by powerful searchlights. The humans attacked during the night, not in waves or formations, but in small teams of 3 to 5 individuals. The footage showed brief, chaotic encounters, shadowy figures moving with incredible speed. attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. They used projectile weapons, technology we had considered obsolete for centuries. Our energy shields were calibrated for plasma and laser weapons, not solid metal projectiles. A Nelvian cadet in the front row shook her head in disbelief. But Admiral, even primitive projectile weapons would be ineffective against coalition battle armor. Correct, Cadet, Corvin acknowledged with a nod. In a direct confrontation, their weapons would have been useless. But the humans didn't engage in direct confrontation. The hologram zoomed in on the footage, showing human attackers targeting very specific points on coalition equipment and armor: joints, vision sensors, ventilation systems. They studied our weaknesses and exploited them with surgical precision. They didn't need to penetrate our armor, just disable it. Corvin gestured to his cybernetic eye. A lesson I learned personally. The Admiral cleared his throat tubes before continuing. By the third day, we had lost nearly 2,000 ground troops and still hadn't engaged the main human force, because there was no main force. Every colonist was a potential combatant. They would tend their crops during the day and attack our positions at night. Corvin manipulated the hologram again, showing a coalition command center. Officers were gathered around a tactical display, arguing. My advisors recommended orbital bombardment to scorch the entire colony from space. It would have been within our protocols for dealing with an insurgency. Corvin's voice hardened. I refused, not out of mercy, but because I needed to understand how a primitive colony was defeating coalition forces so effectively. The hologram shifted to show a new scene: coalition troops advancing toward what appeared to be an abandoned settlement. On the fifth day, we finally reached their main colony hub. It appeared deserted. We detected no life signs, no energy signatures. I ordered a careful sweep of the settlement. Corvin's cybernetic eye dimmed slightly. Another mistake. The footage showed coalition soldiers methodically moving through empty buildings when suddenly, every structure in the settlement began to emit an intense electromagnetic pulse. They had rigged their entire settlement with EMP devices, calibrated specifically to our shield frequencies. Our communications, weapons, and life support systems failed instantly. Corvin gestured to the footage, which was now filled with static. We lost contact with over 5,000 troops in less than a minute. The Admiral shut off the hologram, letting silence fill the hall. The humans emerged from hidden underground bunkers, not to slaughter our defenseless soldiers, as we might have done in their position, but to take prisoners. Corvin's voice had taken on a tone of reluctant admiration. They had studied our physiology as carefully as our technology. They knew exactly how to incapacitate each species without killing them. A senior cadet raised a hand. Admiral, how did you escape? Corvin's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. I didn't. I was captured along with my command staff. We were treated according to what humans call the Geneva Conventions, ancient rules of warfare that somehow survived into their space age. The Admiral straightened his posture, towering over the podium. While we were being held, the remaining human colonists executed their final strategy. They had hidden antimatter charges throughout the tunnel systems beneath their settlement, not to use against our troops, but as a bargaining chip. Corvin activated the hologram one final time, showing the human, a middle-aged female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair, standing before a group of captured coalition officers. This was Dr. Eleanor Chen, chief administrator of the colony. Not a military leader, but a xenobiologist. Corvin's voice had softened. She informed us that the charges could destroy not just our remaining forces, but the rare mineral deposits that had drawn the coalition to Ta City in the first place. The very resources we had come to claim would be rendered unusable for generations. The hologram showed Dr. Chen speaking, though no audio played. She offered terms: our immediate withdrawal from the system in exchange for the release of all prisoners and the deactivation of the charges. Corvin shut off the hologram. I accepted. The hall erupted in murmurs of disbelief. A Cyrillian instructor stood up from the back row. Admiral, with respect, You commanded vastly superior forces. Even with the initial losses, you could have eventually overwhelmed the humans. Perhaps, Corvin conceded. But at what cost? The colony would have been destroyed, the resources contaminated, and we would have suffered unprecedented casualties, all to claim victory against 20,000 civilian colonists. The Admiral's cybernetic eye flashed brightly. That was not a victory worth winning. Corvin began to pace the stage, his ceremonial armor catching the light. I returned to Coalition space in disgrace. My commission was nearly revoked, but I insisted on delivering my full report to the High Command, including my recommendation. Corvin stopped pacing and faced the audience directly. I advised against further military action against human settlements, not because we couldn't win, but because the cost of victory would be too high. The Admiral's gaze swept across the silent hall. High Command ignored my warning. They dismissed the Ta City incident as an anomaly, the result of poor intelligence and tactical errors on my part. Corvin's voice grew dark. They launched a full-scale invasion of the human core systems 6 months later. The tension in the hall was palpable as the cadets leaned forward, eager to hear what happened next. That, Admiral Corvin said, checking the chronometer on his wrist, is a story for the second half of our session. We will reconvene after the midday meal. As the cadets filed out of the hall, buzzing with discussion, a young Terran liaison officer, one of the few humans in the Academy, approached Admiral Corvin. "Permission to speak freely, sir." Corvin's head tilted in curiosity. "Granted, Lieutenant. The Coalition has classified most records from the Human Coalition War. Many of these cadets have never heard an first-hand account before." Corvin studied the human officer carefully. "And does my account match what your people teach about those days?" The lieutenant smiled slightly. "You're being kinder to yourself than our histories are, Admiral. But you're right about one thing. The Ta City colony wasn't a military outpost. It was a scientific research station. Then why fight so effectively?" Corvin asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. The lieutenant's smile widened. "Because Dr. Chen and most of the colonists were former military. They had volunteered for the research mission precisely because it was dangerous frontier work." As the lieutenant walked away, Corvin stood alone on the stage, his cybernetic eye flickering with the memory of that first encounter with humanity's unexpected nature. The negotiation. When the cadets returned to the lecture hall, Admiral Corvin was standing motionless at the center of the stage, his cybernetic eye dimmed as if in sleep mode. As the last cadet took their seat, the eye suddenly flared back to life, and the Admiral straightened. "Before we continue," Corvin began without preamble, "I must clarify something. I did not share the Ta City incident to glorify the humans' capacity for violence or to diminish the Coalition's military prowess. I shared it because it illustrates a fundamental truth about humans that the Coalition failed to grasp for too long." The holographic display activated again, this time showing the gleaming spires of the Coalition capital on Vex Prime. Following my withdrawal from Ta City, High Command deliberated for 3 months. Ultimately, they decided that a single colony's resistance, however effective, was insufficient reason to alter our expansion strategy. Corvin's voice carried a note of ancient frustration. They assessed that with proper intelligence and overwhelming force, human resistance could be crushed. The hologram shifted to show a massive armada, nearly 1,000 Coalition warships gathered near a jump point. The second human containment fleet was 5 times the size of my original force. Their mission was not to capture a single colony, but to secure the entire Sol system, humanity's birthplace, in one decisive strike. Corvin manipulated the controls, and the hologram zoomed in on the fleet's flagship. Supreme Commander Drosvorn, my former mentor, led the operation. He was given a simple directive: secure unconditional surrender from the human government. A Phyrexian cadet raised a pincer. "Admiral, our tactical studies suggest that such overwhelming force should have guaranteed victory." "In conventional warfare, yes," Corvin nodded. But humans had been monitoring our communications since Ta City. They knew we were coming. The hologram changed to show the Sol system, with Earth, humanity's homeworld, prominently featured. The Coalition fleet arrived expecting to encounter orbital defenses similar to those at Ta City, perhaps more numerous but fundamentally the same. Corvin's voice lowered. They found nothing. No defense platforms, no patrol ships, not even early warning systems. Earth appeared completely undefended. Murmurs of confusion spread through the audience. Supreme Commander Vorn was suspicious, of course. He ordered comprehensive scans of the entire system before committing to the attack. Corvin paused. The scans revealed minimal military presence in orbit, but detected unusual activity on Earth's moon and on Mars. The hologram zoomed in on these locations, showing massive construction projects and energy signatures. Vorn assessed these as civilian infrastructure, perhaps emergency shelters in preparation for our attack. He proceeded with the original plan, moving the fleet into optimal bombardment position above Earth. Corvin's cybernetic eye pulsed rapidly. That's when the humans revealed their true strategy. The holographic display showed the Coalition fleet in formation around Earth when suddenly, massive energy surges appeared throughout the solar system. The humans had hidden their entire defense network in plain sight. What our scans had identified as civilian infrastructure were actually massive mass drivers, electromagnetic launch systems, positioned across their solar system. Corvin gestured to the hologram, which now showed hundreds of objects accelerating toward the Coalition fleet from the Moon, Mars, and various asteroids. These were not conventional missiles or warships. They were simple metal projectiles, accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. Corvin's voice was grim. No energy signatures to detect until they were launched. No complex systems to malfunction. Just pure kinetic energy, physics in its most basic form. The hologram depicted the devastation as these projectiles tore through the Coalition fleet. Ships were shredded by impacts they couldn't possibly evade due to the projectile's speed. The first volley destroyed nearly 200 ships before they could even raise shields. The second volley targeted our command vessels specifically. Corvin shut off the gruesome imagery. Supreme Commander Vorn and his entire command staff were killed in the opening minutes of the battle. A stunned silence fell over the hall. But this was not the most shocking aspect of the human defense, Corvin continued. While the kinetic bombardment was still underway, human representatives contacted the remaining Coalition commanders. They offered immediate cessation of hostilities if our forces withdrew beyond the Kuiper Belt. The Admiral manipulated the controls again, and the hologram showed a human diplomatic vessel approaching the damaged Coalition fleet. The acting fleet commander, Admiral Thrix Vor, was prepared to fight to the last ship as our doctrine demanded. But the humans had anticipated this reaction. Corvin's voice took on a note of grudging admiration. Their diplomatic vessel transmitted detailed scans of hundreds more mass drivers throughout their system, all primed and ready to fire. They had only used approximately 20% of their defensive capability in the initial volleys. The hologram shifted to show the human diplomat, a tall, slender male with pale skin and silver hair, addressing the Coalition commanders. This was Ambassador Richard Chen, son of Dr. Eleanor Chen from the Ta City colony. Corvin noted the surprised reactions from several cadets. Yes, the same family. The humans had deliberately chosen him as their representative because of that connection. The Admiral continued. Ambassador Chen delivered a message that fundamentally changed the Coalition's understanding of humanity. He said, "We do not seek your destruction, nor your territory, nor your resources. We seek only to exist without interference. The weapons we have deployed today are defensive only. They cannot pursue you beyond our system. We have no desire for conquest, only for security. The choice before you is simple. Leave us in peace, or be destroyed in a war neither of us wants." Corvin shut off the hologram and faced the cadets directly. Admiral Thrix Vor made the most difficult decision any Coalition commander has ever made. He ordered a full retreat. The Admiral's 4 hands clasped behind his back. Within 24 hours, The remnants of our fleet, less than 400 ships of the original 1,000, had withdrawn beyond the Kuiper Belt. A senior instructor stood. Admiral Corvin, with respect, this contradicts our tactical training. Coalition doctrine forbids retreat under any circumstances. Yes, Corvin acknowledged. Admiral Thrix Vor was court-martialed upon his return. He was executed for cowardice. The Admiral's cybernetic eye dimmed momentarily, but before his execution, he submitted comprehensive battle records that could not be ignored. The High Command was forced to acknowledge that the human defensive capabilities had been grossly underestimated. Corvin reactivated the hologram, now showing a formal diplomatic meeting between Coalition and human representatives. 3 cycles after the failed invasion, the Coalition initiated formal diplomatic contact with humanity. Corvin gestured to the image. I was released from detention to serve as a military advisor during these negotiations, due to my experience with humans at Ta City. The hologram showed Corvin, noticeably younger but already bearing his cybernetic eye, seated among the Coalition delegation. What I witnessed during those negotiations was perhaps more surprising than any battlefield tactic. The humans did not demand reparations. They did not insist on punitive measures against the Coalition. They sought only formal recognition of their sovereign territory and non-aggression pacts. Corvin's voice softened. When I asked Ambassador Chen privately why they were being so lenient, his answer haunts me to this day. Corvin quoted from memory. Admiral, we understand that conflict arises from fear and misunderstanding. Your Coalition attacked us because you feared what you did not understand. We have no desire to perpetuate that cycle. We choose to break it. The Admiral shut off the hologram completely, letting the hall fall into contemplative silence. In the 45 cycles since, humans have become one of our most valuable allies. Their colonies now exist alongside ours in many systems. Their scientific and cultural contributions to the Galactic Coalition have been immeasurable. Corvin's voice grew stronger. But we must never forget the lesson of our first encounters. The Admiral's cybernetic eye flared brightly. Humans are not like us. They do not think as we do. Their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for compassion. They will fight with unimaginable ferocity to defend their homes, yet extend mercy to defeated enemies. They create weapons of terrifying power, yet establish elaborate rules to govern their use. Corvin spread his 4 arms in a gesture of emphasis. They are walking contradictions, simultaneously the most dangerous and most benevolent species we have ever encountered. A young Terran cadet raised her hand. Admiral, as a human, I'm curious. What do you personally believe is humanity's most formidable quality? Corvin studied her for a long moment before answering. Not your technology, though it is impressive. Not your tactical ingenuity, though it is remarkable. The Admiral's voice grew contemplative. It is your adaptability. Every species in the Coalition evolved to excel in specific environments, developing specialized traits for survival. Humans adapted their environments to suit themselves. Corvin gestured to the Terran cadet. Look at yourself. Your species has transformed hostile worlds into homes, developed technologies to overcome your biological limitations, and created social structures that balance individual freedom with collective security. You change constantly, yet remain fundamentally the same. The Admiral straightened, his ceremonial armor glinting under the hall's lights. The Coalition initially saw this adaptability as a weakness, evidence of your species' lack of specialization. We believed our evolutionary advantages would ensure victory. Corvin's voice carried a note of finality. We were wrong. Your adaptability is not a compromise. It is your greatest strength. As the lecture hall lights brightened, signaling the end of the session, Admiral Corvin offered a formal Coalition salute to the assembled cadets. Remember this above all. Underestimating an opponent is the first step toward defeat. The Coalition's greatest military disaster began with the dismissal of humans as primitive and inferior. Corvin's cybernetic eye swept across the audience one final time. It ended with the recognition that true strength lies not in overwhelming force, but in understanding, both of one's adversaries and of oneself. The Turan Cadet approached Admiral Corvin as the hall emptied. "Sir, one last question, if I may. Do you believe the peace between humans and the Coalition will last?" Corvin considered her carefully before responding. "Lieutenant, I believe it will last precisely because both sides remember what the alternative would cost. Humans have a saying that resonated with me during the peace negotiations. The best victory is the one that requires no battle." As the Admiral departed the hall, the cadets dispersed, carrying with them a new understanding of the complex relationship between the Galactic Coalition and humanity, a relationship forged not through conquest, but through respect born of both fear and admiration.